In this lecture, we are going to learn about ear. Ear is the site of a reception of two senses, namely hearing and equilibrium. Reception, in the sense, it receives two types of senses. One, hearing. Two, equilibrium. Hence, it is called as statoacoustic receptor. Stato, equilibrium, acoustic, related to hearing. So the reception of these two senses are by the ear that is present in the human body. Anatomically, the ear is divided into three principal regions. That is, the external ear, the middle ear, the inner ear or internal ear. Coming to the external ear, which is also called as the outer ear. The external ear is divided into three parts: pinna or auricle, external auditory meatus, which is also called as external auditory canal, eardrum or tympanic membrane or tympanum. Auricle. Auricle is the visual portion of the external ear. That is, ear in the human body seems to be only the pinna or auricle. That is, the external appearance of it is this region which we see. This is a elastic flap-like structure covered by skin, and this part consists of elastic cartilage. The function of this is to collect the vibrations that are produced, and the medium here is air. Through this air medium, the vibrations are collected by this visual or visible portion of external ear, and these are sent into the inner parts of the ear. On this pinna, we find the fine hair and the glands called as sebaceous glands. So these sebaceous glands generally produce wax or oil secretions, and these sebaceous glands related to the ear are modified into ceruminous glands which secrete earwax, or this earwax is also called as the cerumen. The next part of the external ear is the external auditory meatus. So here you can notice the presence of the curved tube-like structure. This is the curved tube-like structure which leads into the inner part, and at the end of it you find the tympanic membrane or tympanum, and this is also called as the eardrum. In this curved tube-like structure, we find fine hair, and here also you find the presence of cerumen. Coming to the function of this cerumen, it prevents the entry of foreign particles or the dust from the external region. Last part of the external ear, that is the tympanic membrane or eardrum. This is a very thin structure and it is semi-transparent, and this is present between the external auditory canal and the middle ear. So in this diagram, you can notice the presence of this eardrum. The tympanic membrane is composed of connective tissues covered with the skin on the outside and with the mucous membrane inside. So here, if you see in this region, here this is the one which is composed of the connective tissue, and this is covered with the skin outside, and in the inner side, that is this side, you can see the presence of mucous membrane. Coming to the next, the this is the auditory meatus, or this is the ear canal, and here you can notice the presence of eardrum, and this is the one which consists of the skin, and in this side you have the mucous membrane. Coming to the middle ear, so middle ear is the one which amplifies the vibrations. I think you are familiar with this word amplification, that is, which improves or increases its intensity. And the middle ear is a small air filled cavity which is present in the temporal bone of the cranium. Middle ear is separated from the external ear by the eardrum from the internal ear by a thin bony partition that consists of two small membranes. There is the oval window and the round window. The oval window is also called as fenestra ovalis, and the round window is called as fenestra rotunda. So here you can see the presence of middle ear. So this is the ear pinna, which is a part of external ear. So from here to here, you can see this as the ear pinna, and from here to here, it is the auditory meatus. So here it is auditory meatus, and here you can notice the presence of thin membrane, which is eardrum. And the portion from here, that is this from here, you can see in the diagram clearly, and if this portion is magnified, it seems to be like this, where the middle ear consists of three ossicles: malleus, incus, stapes. So here these are connected to one another in a chain fashion, like a chain, and the shape of this malleus is similar to that of the hammer. Incus is similar to that of the anvil. I think you know what the anvil is. The blacksmith uses this tool to keep the iron while hitting it. So here, if you look at the anvil, it seems to be like this in this shape like this. So here they keep the iron like this, and they make it hot, and they hit it with a hammer. So this is what we call it as the anvil. So here the next is stapes, which is also called as stirrup, and this is in the shape of a stirrup. I think you know what the stirrup is. Here you can see something like this, which is used to climb over the horse. So you have a saddle. Saddle is nothing but the seat which we see over the horse for a rider, and he puts his leg in this stirrup, and this bone stapes is in the shape of this stirrup. So these three bones, that is the malleus, incus, and the stapes, these are in a form of a chain which are linked with each other. So here, this is an important thing. Here, the malleus is attached to the tympanic membrane, and its head articulates with the incus. Here in the diagram, you can notice this. So this one is the malleus, and this malleus is attached to the eardrum. This is the eardrum here, which you see, eardrum, and this is the malleus. And to this you find the attachment of incus. So here this is incus, this region. If you notice this diagram, you can clearly see this. And this stapes is the one which is attached to the incus. And the incus is the intermediate bone in the series of these ear ossicles, and articulates with the head of the stapes. The stapes is attached to the oval window in the thin bony partition between the middle and the inner ear. The ear ossicles are involved in transmission of sound waves to the inner ear. So here you can see the three here, and this is magnified here. And here in the middle ear, you find a canal or a tube-like structure. Here you can see, I think, a tube-like structure which is connecting the pharynx and the middle ear, which is called as Eustachian tube. So this Eustachian tube is the structure which connects the middle ear or the middle ear cavity with the pharynx. And coming to the function of this Eustachian tube, this is involved in equalizing the pressure of air on either sides of the eardrum. You know well that the vibrations from the source of the sound producing object is collected by the ear pinna, and this ear pinna collects them and sends it to the inner parts, where it passes through the auditory meters. And those vibrations, when they reach the eardrum, it starts vibration. While the vibrations are seen here, these vibrations bring about the movement even in this middle ear, and these sounds are transmitted into the inner ear. For this vibration to occur, we need to have the equal pressure on either sides of the eardrum. Here, the basic thing what we should notice is that the vibrations are transmitted into the ear through air medium. So, in the auditory meatus as well as in the middle ear, you have the presence of air medium. So these two regions should have the equal pressure in order to carry the exact vibrations into the inner ear. So this is maintained by the Eustachian tube, which connects the middle ear with the pharynx. So this is about the middle ear. And here the stapes is attached to the oval window, and this oval window is present in the thin bony partition between the middle ear and the inner ear. So here in between the middle ear and the inner ear, you have the thin bony partition, whereas in between the middle ear and the external ear, you have the tympanic membrane or eardrum. So here these are the exact shapes, and in this you find the smallest bone of our body, that is the stapes. So these bones are involved in transmission of vibrations. And in this diagram, you can clearly notice the presence of Eustachian tube. So here you find the presence of Eustachian tube here, and in you can notice the presence of Eustachian tube here in this diagram. And here this is the other tube which you find here. See, this is the frontal view, and in this frontal view you can notice the presence of Eustachian tube. Then coming to the inner ear. So the inner ear is also called as the labyrinth, and in the inner ear you find the presence of fluid. So coming to the external ear and the middle ear, you have the presence of air, and it is filled with air, whereas the inner ear is filled with the fluid. So this inner ear, which is also called as the labyrinth, consists of two parts: the bony labyrinth and the membranous labyrinth. And the bony labyrinth is the series of channels or the tube-like structures, which can be divided into three regions or three areas. That is the cochlea, vestibule, and semicircular canals. Here, first thing about the first important thing, what we should know about the inner ear is that it is filled with a fluid, and it is divided into two regions. One, the bony labyrinth, and the second one is the membranous labyrinth. And again, the bony labyrinth is divided into the series of channels or tube-like structures, where you find three regions in this series of channels, that is the cochlea, vestibule, and three semi-circular canals. So let us see the picture of this. Here, this is these are the parts which we see in the inner ear. So in this, you can notice, so this from here to this region, this is the uh, external ear. Even the tympanum, which you can notice here, is related to the external ear, and this is the middle ear. The colored part here is the inner ear, and inside this you see the presence of fluid. And here in this diagram, you can notice the presence of this stapes. So here you can notice the presence of stapes, and this stapes is attached to the oval window, and this stapes is present in the middle ear, and this middle ear is filled with air, and the inner ear is filled with the fluid. And here you can notice the presence of semicircular canals, which are three in number. These are the semicircular canals, and this portion is called as the vestibule, which we will be discussing it later. And this region, which is just like the watch spring, you can notice a spring-like structure. This is the cochlea. So let us first study about the cochlea. This cochlea is a watch spring-like structure, and this cochlea is the coiled portion of the labyrinth. And this cochlea seems to be a tube-like structure, but inside it you see the presence of three tubes. Three tubes here. If you take the section of it, it seems to be like this. So here you can notice three, one, two, and this three different tubes, and these are bounded to each other, and these three are in the form of a watch spring-like structure. So if you see these three regions here, these three tubes are named as scala vestibuli, scala media, scala tympanic. So here, when you take the section of this cochlea, when a spring is uncoiled, it becomes a lengthy tubular structure. And if you take the section of this lengthy tubular structure, means, for example, if it is coiled like this, if you just uncoil it, so If you uncoil it, it seems to be like this, a tube like this. So here we are cutting it here, and we are going to take a section. And if this part is seen, it will appear like this, and inside it you find three tubes, that is scala vestibuli, scala media, and scala tympani. So here in this scala vestibuli, you see the presence of perilymph. So it is filled with perilymph, and it is divided from the middle one, which is called as the scala media. So here you can notice. So this is the scala vestibuli, and this scala vestibuli is filled with the perilymph, and dividing this scala media and scala vestibuli, you have a membrane here which is called as the Resiner's membrane. So the Resiner's membrane is the membrane. Here you can notice it. This membrane divides the scala vestibuli and the scala media. This scala media and the scala tympani, that is, this is scala tympani. So this scala media and the scala tympani is divided by another membrane which is called as the basilar membrane. Basilar membrane. So here the outer, or the upper and the lower, is filled with perilymph, and the middle one is filled with endolymph. So here you can notice this is filled with perilymph, and the lower one, the lowermost one, is filled with the perilymph, but the middle one is filled with the endolymph. And this region consists of the endolymph, and this middle tubular portion of the cochlea is also called as the cochlear duct. It is called as the cochlear duct. And the cochlear epithelium forms a sensory ridge called as organ of Corti on the basilar membrane. So here you can find this structure. This is called as the organ of Corti, and in this diagram you can clearly see here. This is the organ of Corti, and this is the main structure which is involved in receiving the vibrations and transforming it into nerve impulse. So coming to the organ of Corti, this organ of Corti consists of hair cells. These are the actual structures which act as the auditory receptors. So the auditory function, or the receiving of these vibrations, is done by the hair cell that is present in the organ of Corti. We have many cells, so these hair cells act as the auditory receptors. The basal end of the hair cell is in close contact with the auditory nerve fibers. A large number of processes called as stereocilia are projected from the apical part of the each hair cell. And above the rows of the hair cell, we see a thin elastic membrane called as tectorial membrane. So the first thing what we should know is that in the middle tubular part of the cochlea, which is called as the scala media or the cochlear duct, we see a presence of a structure called as organ of Corti. So here we can notice the presence of a structure over the basilar membrane. So basilar membrane is the membrane which divides the scala media and scala tympani. And in this tube, you see the presence of endolymph, whereas in the other two tubular structures, we see the presence of perilymph. And in this organ of Carti, we have the important structures like the hair cells. So, hair cells, these are the actual receptors for auditory function. And these hair cells are connected to the auditory nerve fibers at the base. And on the apical part of this hair cell, we find the presence of stereocilia. And this over this stereocilia, you find an elastic membrane which is called as the tectorial membrane. So let us see the magnifying structure of this organ of Carti. So here in the organ of Carti, you can see the structures. Let us see in detail about this. So here, this one, these are the hair cells. So here you can see the hair cells, and these hair cells are the outer hair cells. So here the outer hair cells are seen, and this is the inner hair cell. So these hair cells are present in the organ of Carti, and this organ of Carti is present on the basilar membrane, and the basilar membrane is the structure which divides the scala media and scala tympanic. So here at the base of this hair cell, you can notice in the next diagram here, this is the structure of an individual hair cell. So here this small projections which we see from this cell, these are called as the stereocilia. And at the base of it here, you can notice the presence of the nerve fibers here. All these nerve fibers are joined together and they are connected with the auditory nerve. So at the basal end, you find the efferent auditory nerve fibers, and on the apical part of this hair cell, you can notice the presence of stereocilia. So in this diagram, if you see here, these are the hair cells. So here. So these are the hair cells here. You can see the hair cells here, and here the base of it is connected to the nerve fibers, and here you see the presence of here you can see the presence of the inner hair cell, and this is the membrane which is called as the pectoral membrane. So this is a thin elastic membrane which is called as the tectorial membrane, and this tectorial membrane is found over the rows of stereocilia, and this is the structure of an individual hair cell. Here you can see the stereocilia clearly, the finger-like projections on the apical part of this hair cell, and at the base you find the presence of auditory nerve fibers. So here you can see the presence of tectorial membrane. Here this blue colored one, this is the tectorial membrane. This is thin elastic membrane, and this is present over the stereocilia. Stereocilia are the finger-like projections which we find on the hair cell. And coming to the next part of the inner ear, the semicircular canals. So here the semicircular canals are the structures which are three in number, and these semicircular canals lie at right angles to each other. So this is the one semicircular canal, two. This is the one. This is the two, and this would be the third one. And these first one is approximately at right angle to the other two. And here at the base of this semicircular canals, you can see the swollen structure here. For all the three, you find the presence of this small swollen structure, which is called as the ampulla. Ampulla. So this is ampulla. So here, this ampulla consists of projecting ridges called as cristae. So here you can see the magnified structure of this ampulla. Here you see the ampulla here, and inside this you see the presence of this hair-like cells, which are in the form of cristae. So this cristae actually consists of hair cells, and these hair cells guess the movement, and because of the movement, we can sense the angular acceleration. So here, the rotation of the body can be sensed by these semi circular canals, and at the base of the semicircular canals, as you see here, we have the ampulla, and in the ampulla we have cristae. The cristae are these are the structures which are present in the ampulla, and these are the projecting ridges. So inside this, you see the ridges here, and in each ridge we have the presence of many hair cells, and these hair cells can sense the angular function. Inside this, you can notice this cristae. Inside the cristae, you have the hair cells here. So here, these are the hair cells. Even here, you can notice these are the hair cells, and these hair cells senses the angular acceleration. That is the direction of the movement or the turning of the head to sides, or all these sensed by the cristae, which are present in the ampulla of semicircular canals. So, coming to the function of the semicircular canals, we can say that these semicircular canals can sense angular acceleration. So, as it could sense the angular acceleration, we can sense the rotation of the body, we can sense the direction of the body movement, or turning of head to sides. All these can be sensed by the semicircular canals. And coming to the next, we have the vestibule. So here we have already studied about the cochlea, and we have studied about the semicircular canals. So here, this region here, this region is the cochlea region. This one, cochlea region, and this region is the semicircular canals. These are the semicircular canals, and in between these two, we have the vestibule. Vestibule is the oval central part of the bony labyrinth located between the cochlea and the semicircular canals. So the membranous labyrinth in the vestibule consists of two sacs. So here, as we have studied that the inner ear is divided into bony labyrinth and the membranous labyrinth. In the bony labyrinth, you have the semicircular canals, vestibule, and the cochlea. And in the vestibule, you see the membranous labyrinth, and this membranous labyrinth consists of two sacs called as sacculae and utricle. So these two collectively are known as the otolith organ. So here in this diagram you can notice. So this is the utricle here, and this is the saccule. So here utricle plus the sacculae, utricle plus sacculae together is called as the otolith organ. So this otolith organ consists of sacculae and the utricle. In these sacculae as well as the utricle, you see the presence of projecting ridges. So the same kind of projecting ridges are also seen in the ampulla of semicircular canals. So here we have the semicircular canal. Here in this diagram also you can notice the presence of the semicircular canal, and the base of this semicircular canal consists of the ampulla, and this inside has the cristae, and this cristae are nothing but the projecting ridges. In the same way, even in the otolith organ, so here the otolith organ is the combination of utricle and the saccule. So here you can notice the presence of these two here, and in this you have the macula. Cristae is the projecting ridge that is present in the semicircular canal, whereas the macula are the projecting ridges that are present in the otolith organ. And coming to this function, this is the receptor for gravity. So here the macula, which is present in the utricle as well as the saccule, is the receptor for gravity, and these are helpful in sensing the linear acceleration. So linear means a straight or a straight movement in a straight line is the linear movement. In the same way, we can sense this linear acceleration with the help of the macula, which is present in the otolith organ, and the sacculae, it can receive the vertical movement. So, for example, if you are in the lift and if you are moving upward or downward, this can be sensed by the sacculae. So this sacculae senses the vertical movement, whereas the utricle senses the horizontal movement. So, for example, if you are blindfolded, that means if you tie a cloth to your eyes and make you to sit in a car, and if the car moves, even without sensing with your eyes, you can sense the movement of the car, whether it is moving forward or backward. This could be done because of the functioning of the macula that is present in the utricle of your vestibule. Whereas the same thing, if the same thing is done, that is, if you are blindfolded and if you are made to stand in a lift, and if we bring the upward movement or the downward movement of the lift, you can sense that. This is done by the linear reception of the movement by the sacculae. And the semicircular canals and the otolith organ together constitute the vestibular apparatus. So here, let us recall the otolith organ. Otolith organ is the collective term used for sacculae and utricle. And in the same way, we have another term which is called as the vestibular apparatus. So the vestibular apparatus is the collective term for otolith organ as well as the semicircular canals. So here you can clearly see the maculae of utricle and sacculae, and here even if you nod your head or if you move your head, the endolymph that is present inside and the hair cells which are present here can be noticed, and this helps in sensing the movements. So all these are the functions of the parts of inner ear. So in the inner ear consists of cochlea. Cochlea is the organ which is involved in hearing function, whereas the equilibrium of the body is maintained or sensed by the vestibular part as well as the semicircular canals. The semicircular canals and the otolith organ are innervated by the vestibular branch of eighth cranial nerve, and it is concerned with equilibrium, that is maintenance of balance of the body and posture. Vestibular branch of the auditory nerve carries these impulses to the brain. So this equilibrium function is carried to the brain by the vestibular branch, whereas the functioning of the function of the hearing is carried by the auditory branch of the eighth cranial nerve. So this is about the anatomy of ear. And in the next lecture, we are going to study about the mechanism of hearing.